What do you think some of the key themes and trends are that financial institutions should be thinking about as they're getting ready to, close out this year and enter into a whole new one?
Yeah, I could probably share a few things, Dan. First of all, just the importance of continued information sharing
Hmm.
and improving, threat intelligence sharing. Within the banking industry, it's done well. There are some very helpful organizations out there like FSISAC that allows the banking community to share information with each other. Um, but there's still room for improvement in terms of, for example, when banks, should notify their regulators as to when they either have a security incident or, very important, Dan, if they may have a security incident. Because keep in mind, a lot of these cyber attacks, when they start, like a denial of service, it's sometimes difficult to figure out if it is actually a technical issue, human error, or if there's actually a cyber attack. Um, and by the way, that threat intelligence collection is important for the Federal Reserve as well as for other organizations like the U.S. CERT. We encourage banks to notify us as soon as possible if anything's happening because we can easily collate that information. And by the way, Dan, this is great. We do this in Cleveland, right next door from Pittsburgh. Our threat intelligence team is based out of Cleveland, Ohio. And they're very prepared and well trained to be able to take information once they receive it and identify if the firm itself is just being individually targeted or if we're seeing a broader attack against the entire, say, financial services industry. And obviously, that'll tailor our approach in terms of how we effectively respond to that kind of scenario. Um, so I think that's one of the key things that you're going to see more focus on, certainly coming from the Federal Reserve and the banking industry. And that's just that importance of information sharing, and particularly when there's an incident, making sure that that information is shared promptly and effectively. Um, Other things that you're going to see too, certainly the importance of resilience. And one of the things that I've been personally communicating back to CISOs, I think CISOs at the largest banks have done very well dealing with cyber threats and scenarios that are well known. So ransomware, for example, I've seen banks take significant steps in preparing for a possibility of a ransomware attack. Um, but one of the things I'm encouraging them to do from a resilience standpoint is don't necessarily just focus on the high likelihood, well-known types of attacks. Banks should also be thinking about the things that, frankly, we haven't seen yet, but we know are possible or viable. And then, of course, that whole question of risk management. Are you looking at those scenarios? Are you checking to see if your controls are effective in dealing with those things that have yet to occur, but certainly could occur? And then, of course, assessing how prepared is the firm to deal with those types of potential future scenarios. You'll hear a lot of that. And then finally, of course, the interconnectedness risk. As we continue to see the evolution of the banking industry, particularly with more and more fintechs coming onto the scene, as we continue to see this migration to the cloud, as we continue to see banks consider taking core banking services and working with significant service providers, there's a lot of additional interconnectivity out there that's happening. And Dan, I'll mention one area in particular. APIs, application programming interfaces. It's been remarkable to see how quickly banks over this past 5 years have adopted the use of APIs to share information with each other, with fintechs, with their SSPs, with their customers, using these APIs on their internet perimeter, where before in the past they used to have, slower methods, more direct one-to-one point connectivity solutions. APIs provide a lot of value in terms of making it much more efficient and frankly faster of sharing information over the internet. But there's new security risk and concerns there too. I mean, that adoption of APIs is definitely accelerating interconnectedness amongst the banking industry. So that's an area that we're focusing on, making sure that banks are understanding the risk when they implement APIs, making sure that they're testing their API security controls to make sure that they're effective. These are, I think, the things that we're certainly going to be focusing on the next year or two to make sure that banks continue to provide this level of service and certainly to ensure the safety and soundness, of our overall financial institutions.
I love that, Matt. I mean, what really resonated with me a lot is the information sharing, the continued information sharing. I think that's so important for organizations to share indicators, to share what they're seeing, to share malware signatures on these types of attacks. I think that is one way that we could all build resilience in the entire financial system, right? And the organizations out there like FSISAC and some others in the private space that are pushing that and doing that. And obviously the cybersecurity community in financial services, I think, is a tightly knit one. So I'm happy to hear that that's a continued focus. I think that's so important going into the future. And then, my final thought, you talked about the what could happen, right? That resonated with me a lot too, right? For obvious reasons, we just had a major global pandemic event, right? And I think, in this past year and a half, when people, pulled out their risk assessments and were updating their risk assessments, really makes you think, right? When you are assigning probability and impact ratings and thinking about what could happen, it just goes to show you that a lot of things are possible. So to your point about, thinking about some of those different things that could happen and testing from those points of view, I think is such a wise piece of advice from you. And I'm happy that, you're out there in front of some of our most important financial institutions on the cutting edge of that. So thank you so much.
Well, Dan, thanks for this opportunity. I really appreciate having the chance to share what I've learned and experienced with others. So again, we can improve the overall safety and soundness of our financial institutions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for listening today. If you found this information helpful and you want to learn more, please visit our website, www.echeloncyber.com, where we will be posting more information like this on a regular basis. Matt, thank you so much again. It was our honor, our pleasure to have you here today, and we really enjoyed this. I personally enjoyed it myself, so thank you so much.
Thanks again, Dan.